Hi, folks. The Filipina here. And today I want to answer the question: are all women the same? Is a woman from the East any different from one in the West? Or are you going to see the same bullcrap wherever you go? Now, before we begin, I expect that a lot of you have already made up your minds about this subject. I'm sure the comment section is going to be flooded with people who say, yep, women are all the same no matter where you look. And in some aspects, I agree with you. But it goes a lot deeper than that. All women are generally drawn to the same things. We look for the same types of men. And we're affected by the same innate forces like hypergamy. I don't deny that. But that doesn't mean we don't see the world very differently in other areas. It's an undisputed fact that more and more Western men are pulling up stakes and heading east to find a partner. But what are they hoping to find? If women are really all the same, what would be the point? Obviously, some of you think there's enough of a difference to make it worth your while to travel across the globe. But is that a fool's errand? Or do the men that go east know something that the rest of you don't? Now, I'm not here to say who's better or who's worse. There are good women in every country. I'm just here to help you figure out who's a better match for you. So let's look at some of the traits and characteristics that make being with an Eastern woman a different experience. The first thing you'll notice is the physical. We tend to be smaller with flatter noses and flatter butts. We tend to have smaller chests, and as most of you already know, Filipinas have the smallest boobs on the planet. Now, if those are things you can look past, or maybe they're things you actually prefer, then great. But those are only superficial differences that don't have anything to do with our behavior. So, what makes us truly distinct? To figure that out, we need to look at nature versus nurture. Now, every woman has the same nature. We're driven to find a man that can protect us and support us and won't leave us when the going gets tough. We have a tendency to want to mate with someone who has good genes, and we prefer a man of higher status to a lower one. We also desire a man who's in a better financial position than we are, which can create a real problem when a woman already has her own resources. Studies have shown that no matter how much money a woman has, she tends to only be attracted to a man who makes even more than she does. And in places where women have access to high paying jobs, that means a shrinking pool of options to find a mate. Are those female traits bad? Well, they certainly don't line up with the Disney fairy tale you've all been sold, where it's only supposed to be about love, but that's the way things are. So it's about time we pull back the curtain and take a cold, hard look at the reality of the situation. The fact is, women can't help those things any more than you can help preferring a woman with youth and beauty, with an attractive waist to hip ratio, a symmetrical face, and a low body count. There's nothing any of us can do about our preferences. It's part of our hardware that was installed before we were born. But even if we can't change our nature, there's a variable that can change, and it's the way we were raised, our nurture. Eastern and Western culture is often worlds apart, which means very noticeable differences in attitude that can drastically alter the equation. Now, for those of you who don't believe that culture has any real effect on behavior, let me ask you this. Do you really think a Cambodian sheep herder sees the world the same way as a London attorney? Of course they don't. They have a totally different outlook on life because they come from different worlds, which makes them very different people. So, how are women in the East different from women in the West? Well, that's a very broad question because Eastern women can be very different from each other. A Korean woman is different from a Thai, and a Vietnamese woman has a different set of attitudes from a Filipina. But there are plenty of similarities between Eastern cultures that set us apart from women of the West, and they might just be the qualities you're looking for. One of the first things you'll notice is that an Eastern woman doesn't want to compete with you. We have a strong concept of teamwork, and when you choose a woman from this part of the world, she's gonna see the two of you as one unit with a common goal. An Eastern woman won't constantly be trying to one up you or prove that she can do everything you can, which is just another way of saying she doesn't really need you. Being strong and independent isn't a woman's goal here. It's more about functioning as a team. An Eastern woman doesn't seek individual empowerment. She feels empowered by having a successful relationship, which leads right into the next difference. We have more traditional gender roles. To us, it's not a problem to admit the strengths and weaknesses of each sex. We have no desire to look like men or act like men. And unlike the current mood in the West, we actually appreciate a healthy dose of masculinity. We readily acknowledge that men are better at some things and women are better at others, a concept that's become blasphemous to say out loud in the West, even though it's obvious to anyone with half a brain. Yes, women are more emotional and men are more logical. Women are more intuitive and men are more decisive, and that's okay. We succeed by using our individual strengths to the advantage of both of us as a couple. We take marriage seriously, like you folks used to do. The saying, a woman is only as loyal as her options, isn't as prevalent here, and we consider marriage a lifelong commitment. I intend to be married only once, and when I say I do, I mean it. Marriage is the cornerstone of any healthy society, and I'm not alone in my thinking. Most Filipinos feel the same way. In the majority of Asian countries, the government doesn't provide for a woman's every whim, and they certainly don't make divorce profitable. We're more dependent on our husbands for security, so finding and keeping a good mate is in our best interest. Most Eastern women practice emotional restraint, except maybe for Filipinas, and we tend to get quiet instead of losing our cool. For those of you that want to break from constant drama and shouting matches, we offer a welcome change. We generally have a more positive outlook on life and we're easier to please, which makes us more agreeable and easier to be around. We appreciate the little things and we're not always demanding bigger, better, and more. Where a Western woman often feels entitled to everything under the sun, an Eastern woman is more likely to be happy with what she has. No dishwasher? No problem. We'll just wash them by hand, and we won't complain about having to do it. No vacuum cleaner? Who cares? A broom works just as well. We don't see manual labor as degrading, and we don't need things to make us happy. A concept that somehow was lost in the West. We value the lost art of cooking, which is considered a desirable skill here, not a chore. It makes us happy to provide for our husband, and we don't feel ashamed for preferring a domestic life in the kitchen. In the West, a woman who chooses a traditional role is often seen as not living up to her potential. But in the East, being a good housewife and a good mother is the pinnacle of success. Which brings us to the Eastern concept of family. We have strong ties here, and we still put emphasis on the importance of the nuclear family. Having children is one of a woman's greatest achievements, but we also revere our elders. To us, an older person is a wiser person, and even though that's certainly not always true, it's the way we see it, and they're a central part of the family unit. Instead of parking him in a nursing home to live out the remaining days, we care for our elders until the day they die. Our traditional attitudes also extend to the way Eastern women dress, which is generally more conservative. We purposely try not to stand out in the crowd because calling attention to yourself is considered ill mannered. Things like facial tattoos aren't exactly popular here, and most of the nose rings you're liable to see will be on a cow. But perhaps the biggest difference between East and West is how we see you, the Western male. As I've said before, we don't see what you do when you look in the mirror because we use a different grading scale. Being a little overweight or having a few extra years doesn't disqualify you the same way it does in the West, which makes Eastern women more attainable. Now, as soon as I say that, many of you assume I mean we're more affordable and we're willing to accept damaged goods out of desperation. And while a certain amount of that is certainly true in some cases, it doesn't change the fact that we also find you more attractive than your own women do. You can believe that or not, but it's true. Now, I'll be the first one to admit that we Eastern women certainly have our faults. We tend to be insanely jealous. We can often be overly superstitious and illogical. And we're way too insecure, among other things. And Western women have some advantages. They already share your culture. They tend to be more worldly. And they're easier to communicate with because they speak your language. But hopefully, you can see the things that set us apart and why we might still be a better match. I'm not saying that Eastern women are better. What I'm saying is that we're different and that not all women are the same. What you'll find in the East is a more conservative, traditional view towards relationships. And if that's what appeals to you, there's nothing wrong with that. Your chances of being valued for the things that matter, like stability and loyalty, are generally much greater over here. So your chances of finding a quality mate might be higher too. One of the problems, though, is that the differences that make us unique are being erased. As the world gets smaller and ideas travel more quickly through social media, people are being stripped of their culture. We're all being exposed to the same ideas, whether or not they're good ones. And who knows where that will end? I'd like to think we still have a few generations, but things seem to be changing rapidly, and not necessarily for the better. So before the window of opportunity closes, ask yourself what it is you're looking for. What kind of woman would make you happy? And realize that you have options. It's still not too late. Well, that's it for this episode, and I'll be back on Tuesday with something new. Till then, folks. If you think about it, I'm kind of like your own personal genie. Every week, I fulfill two of your wishes when I bring you magical content about life and culture in the Philippines and explain the differences between East and West. If you appreciate my efforts, all I ask is you give a thumbs up on this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit the notification bell so you can see what I've conjured up next. And if you're really feeling like a generous master, please visit my Patreon page for extra content and exclusive videos and features. And now for that third wish, you have only to ask, and it's my pleasure to make it come true. What did you wish for? Master! I don't think I can do that, and Mrs. Master would not be happy about it.